February 1st, 1945, 22,000 feet over Mönchengladbach, Germany. The sky is a white ocean of contrails and thunder. The hum of hundreds of Wright cyclone engines melts into one living roar that vibrates through aluminum skin and bone. Frost creeps along the cockpit glass of B-17 number 42-38047. Heaven sent, its nose gunner squinting through the haze at the black blossoms of flak bursting below. Inside, the crew are shadows against the dim red glow of their instrument panel. "Formation steady," says Captain Howard Johnson, voice calm, clipped, the practiced tone of a man hiding fatigue. Behind him, the co-pilot, Lieutenant George Clark, adjusts prop pitch to keep pace with the bomber on their port side. 10 horsepower GAL. Both aircraft belong to the 91st Bomb Group, flying the day's strike against rail yards that feed the Rhine. Flak bursts climb through the formation, each one a black flower edged in orange. The smell of burned cordite leaks through the vents. The crew braces for impact. Then the world lurches, violent, deafening. A fragment of shrapnel rips through Heaven Sent's starboard wing. The engine coughs, catches fire. "Number 4's gone," yells the flight engineer. Johnson orders it feathered, but before the propeller can lock, a second burst rocks the fuselage. The aircraft drops in a shallow dive, its formation breaking around it like startled birds. Below and behind, the second B-17, 10 horsepower GAL, tries to correct her own position. Visibility is poor. Contrails blur the view. The co-pilot shouts, "Watch it! She's banking right!" It's too late. The two flying fortresses meet in a shriek of metal and spinning propellers. Heaven Sent's belly tears open. 10 horsepower's dorsal fuselage, shearing gun turrets, ripping skin, scattering fragments like silver leaves. Instead of disintegrating, the impact locks them together, one bomber perched grotesquely atop another. For a few heart-stopping seconds, both machines tumble. Then, impossibly, they stabilize. Two broken aircraft, fused by accident and gravity, flying as one. Inside 10 horsepower GAL, oxygen masks dangle, glass rains from the overhead, and the bomb bay doors hang half open. The pilot, Major Don Pashley, regains consciousness to the impossible sight of another B-17's fuselage pressed into his own canopy frame, its propellers still spinning inches from his head. "Christ Almighty," someone whispers. The interphone crackles. "What the hell is that on top of us?" Pashley doesn't answer. He already knows. The wind screams through the shattered fuselage like a living thing. The vibration is so intense it blurs the vision of every man still conscious. In Heaven Sent, the lower crew compartment is torn wide open. Daylight pours through gaps where metal used to be. In 10 horsepower GAL, the cockpit canopy is half crushed under the weight of the other bomber's fuselage. Two crews, 20 men in all, are now trapped in a death spiral neither side can fully control. Pashley, the lower pilot, jerks the control column back, testing the resistance. It feels sluggish, but responsive barely. He glances up through the twisted roof panels and sees what no pilot was ever meant to see. Another bomber's bomb bay, pressed flat against his cockpit like the ceiling of a nightmare. Fuel leaks drip through the ruptured belly of Heaven, sent onto the upper glass of 10 horsepower GAL. The droplets smear under the slipstream like tears. "Radio, get me any channel," Pashley yells. The radio operator, his face bloodied from the collision, struggles to find a signal. The intercom flickers alive for a moment, catching fragments of chaos from the rest of the formation. Two ships collided. Christ, they're stuck together. "Is anyone bailing out?" Then static swallows the airwaves again. In the upper plane, Heaven Sent, Captain Johnson's head throbs. His co-pilot is slumped against the yoke, his headset sparking. When Johnson looks down through the gaping hole in the fuselage, he sees the strangest sight of his life. Another set of wings beneath them, engines still turning. He can feel their vibration through the floor. The two aircraft are flying somehow, locked together, their center of gravity perfectly misaligned, yet momentarily balanced by sheer momentum. The smell of smoke grows sharper. The number 4 engine on Johnson's starboard wing still burns, the flames flicking dangerously close to the leaking fuel line. He grabs the fire extinguisher handle and yanks hard, watching the discharge pressure drop. The flame hisses, sputters, but doesn't die. "Feather 3 and 4, he shouts to what remains of his crew. "Dump the bombs! Get rid of the weight!" Below, Pashley hears the muffled thumps as the bomb bay doors above him jar loose. 500-pounders tumble into the void, spinning toward the clouds below. The sudden loss of weight jolts both aircraft upward, the nose pitching high. Pashley slams the throttles forward, countering the climb. "Hold her steady!" he barks to his co-pilot, who can barely hear through the roar. The two bombers shudder, groaning under stresses they were never designed to endure. Rivets snap, seams open, and the tail sections quiver like dying animals. From the gunner's blister, near the rear of 10-horsepower Gal, Sergeant Louis Green peers through a jagged hole in the fuselage. He can see the underbelly of Heaven Sent pressed so close he could almost touch it. He spots figures through the other plane's windows, faces pale, frantic, eyes darting in disbelief. For an instant, they lock eyes, men from different crews, sharing the same impossible fate. Green raises his hand in a wordless gesture, half salute, half prayer. One of the upper gunners does the same. Neither knows if they're alive or already dead, just waiting to fall. The control surfaces flutter violently. Pashley realizes with a sickening clarity that they are losing altitude. The instruments spin erratically. The airspeed needle dances between 160 and 180 knots. The altimeter unwinds too fast to track. They are dropping, but the entangled wings are holding them level just enough to slow the descent. "Prepare to bail out," he orders, even as he doubts anyone can. The upper fuselage of Heaven Sent blocks both top hatches, and the lower ship's waist doors are twisted shut by the impact. The men are trapped in 2 coffins welded by air pressure and luck. Over the North Sea below, a handful of surviving B-17s watch the doomed pair drift westward, trailing smoke. Over the intercoms, stunned voices murmur disbelief. They're still flying, still together. And indeed, for almost a full minute, 60 impossible seconds, the two aircraft continue as one, gliding in a sick parody of formation flying. The horizon rolls slowly. The clouds below beckon, soft and indifferent. In the final moments, the control linkages fail. The tail of Heaven Sent begins to tear free, twisting under aerodynamic load. Johnson feels the floor buckle beneath his boots. He looks down through the torn metal at the men in 10-horsepower Gal, and in that instant, he makes his decision. He unbuckles his harness and pulls himself toward the escape hatch, shouting, "Bail out! Get out now!" The surviving gunners scramble for the openings, some without parachutes, some already too weak to move. Below, Pashley yanks his own yoke back to give them a few precious seconds. "If they're getting out, we're holding steady," he tells his co-pilot, voice raw, desperate. For a brief, terrible heartbeat, it works. The upper plane's crew begin to leap into the sky, their parachutes bursting open like white blooms in the grey light. Then the bond breaks. The upper fuselage shears away with a wrenching crack that sounds almost alive. Heaven Sent rolls violently to starboard, tearing loose from the crippled B-17 below. The sudden shift throws Pashley's crew against their harnesses as their own aircraft lurches into a spin. Two giants, once locked in the strangest embrace the air ever saw, begin their separate falls. The separation is violent, like a bone breaking. The instant Heaven Sent tears free, the sky seems to explode around it. Fragments of fuselage spiral away, fluttering down like burning leaves. The upper plane rolls to its right, its remaining wing twisted and bleeding smoke. Its bomb bay doors, still gaping, whistle in the slipstream. For a heartbeat, the battered B-17 catches the air again and steadies as if refusing to die. Inside, Captain Howard Johnson grips the yoke with both hands, muscles straining. The controls respond sluggishly, every surface damaged, every gauge spinning or dead. Through the side window, he can see his right wing on fire. Below him, the other B-17, the one that had saved and doomed them both, falls in a wide, spiraling descent, pieces shearing off as it tumbles toward the sea. Johnson knows there's no saving Heaven Sent. He turns his head toward his co-pilot's seat, empty now, and then to the back where the remaining crew struggle to reach the waist hatch. Wind howls through the shattered cockpit glass, numbing his face. He can't hear their words, only the rhythm of their movement. The intercom is gone. The instruments are meaningless, but instinct still guides him, the unspoken code of a pilot. Keep the aircraft steady as long as you can, so your crew can escape. He eases the yoke back, fighting the trembling frame. The aircraft shudders, but holds. In the narrow corridor behind him, Sergeant Louis Green pulls at the hatch lever. It's jammed. He slams it with a wrench, once, twice, until it finally gives. A blast of freezing air fills the compartment, carrying away maps, gloves, and fragments of insulation. "Go!" Green yells, shoving the radio operator toward the opening. The man hesitates for a fraction of a second, then drops. His body vanishes into the cloud deck below. One by one, the surviving crew follow. Green counts them off, his voice breaking with each name. When the last man jumps, he hesitates. He looks toward the cockpit, where Johnson still wrestles the controls, alone. Their eyes meet through the smoke. Green hesitates, then gives a brief, hard salute before stepping into the slipstream. Now Johnson is the only soul left aboard. He exhales once. "All right," he murmurs to no one. "You've done enough?" He pulls the yoke gently to the left, banking the aircraft toward open water. The fire has reached the fuselage now, licking the side panels, creeping along the wing root. The smell of burning oil fills the cockpit. The heat scorches his cheek through his oxygen mask. He knows he'll never make the sea. At 10,000 feet, the right wing gives way completely, snapping off in a burst of flame. The plane rolls violently, its tail shearing apart. For one final instant, Heaven Sent is a comet streaking downward, its descent so fast it pulls a white vapor trail behind it. From above, other B-17 crews watch in stunned silence. Over the intercoms, voices whisper what no one wants to say aloud. 2 fortresses, both gone. The second plane, 10-horsepower Gal, is still falling in wide spirals, its left wing crumpled, one engine frozen in place. Inside, Major Don Pashley is conscious but barely holding on. His co-pilot is slumped, bleeding. The altimeter unwinds so fast the needle blurs. Smoke fills the cockpit. The gauges glow faintly red in the haze. "Bail out!" Pashley croaks into the interphone, but no one answers. He can barely hear his own voice over the screaming wind. Through the side window, he catches a glimpse of parachutes opening above, white dots falling toward the sea. For a second, he thinks maybe some of the other crew, Johnson's men, have made it. That thought steadies him. He tilts his head back against the seat, feeling the vibration fade from the yoke. The controls are gone, the plane descending on its own. He reaches for the photo clipped above his altimeter, a woman in a summer dress holding a small child. He touches the edge of it with his gloved fingers, then lets go. The cockpit begins to disintegrate around him. Aluminum panels peel away under the stress, flying off into the air like tattered wings. The oxygen tanks rupture, feeding the flames that chase through the fuselage. The heat becomes unbearable. The bomber falls faster. At 3,000 feet, the tail snaps off. The body of 10-horsepower Gal breaks into 3 pieces that spin apart, nose, wing, and fuselage. The debris arcs downward in slow, almost graceful motion before vanishing into the mist below. Moments later, the sea flashes white as it receives them. From the air, other B-17 sees 2 columns of smoke blooming upward, merging into one dark smear across the clouds. The crews who witness it fall silent. There is no cheering, no chatter, just the low hum of engines and the collective understanding that something holy and horrifying has just happened. Two planes that collided by accident had, for a moment, flown together in defiance of everything men believed possible. And now both rest in the cold Atlantic, their fragments scattering like ashes across the grey water. That night, at base in England, the surviving formation returns short 2 bombers. The crew chiefs count and recount, hoping for a mistake. There isn't one. 2 call signs go unanswered. 2 chalked names on the flight board stay unmarked. In the debrief tent, no one speaks above a whisper. Someone sketches what they saw. A rough outline of one fortress atop another, wings aligned, propellers spinning side by side. The drawing passes hand to hand, each man touching it like a relic. They'll talk about it for years afterward in pubs and reunions, always the same way, quietly, reverently, as though the sky itself had performed a miracle before taking it back. By the time the rest of the 91st Bomb Group returns to Bassingbourn, the February daylight is already fading to grey. The runway is slick with drizzle, the control tower windows fogged by breath and cigarette smoke. Ground crews wait along the perimeter fences, counting the shapes descending through the haze. They know something's wrong before the last bombers even touch down. The formation is uneven. Gaps where none should be. And the radio chatter, usually filled with post-mission relief, crude jokes or exhaustion, is silent. When the final B-17 rolls to a stop, engines sputtering, the base commander, Colonel William Poole, climbs the ladder to the cockpit window. "Where's Johnson?" "Pashley?" he demands. The pilot, still strapped in his seat, just shakes his head. They hit. Midair. "Stuck together for a minute, sir." Then they went down. No one says anything else for a long time. In the operations hut, a clerk begins typing the initial report. The typewriter keys clack mechanically, the sound of routine work hiding the weight of tragedy. Mission to Mönchengladbach. 2 aircraft collided approximately 22,000 feet, believed over enemy territory. Both aircraft observed descending in tandem. Outcome presumed total loss. But word spreads through the base faster than any memo. By nightfall, every man on station knows the story. 2 fortresses that locked together and flew as one before crashing. It sounds like madness, a myth, but those who saw it swear it's true. The flight surgeon checks on the crews who witnessed the collision. Several are still in shock. One navigator, his voice trembling, describes what he saw. They weren't falling right away. It was like they were holding each other up, like they didn't want to let go. The words hang heavy in the air. Over the next few days, official channels try to make sense of what happened. Intelligence officers interview returning airmen, sketch diagrams, and calculate flight paths. They cross-reference the positions of both aircraft, Heaven Sent and 10 horsepower GAL, matching serial numbers, formation spacing, and altitude. One report, filed by Major Poole himself, notes, "Eyewitnesses confirm the 2 aircraft remained physically interlocked for approximately 1 minute, maintaining partial altitude and apparent level flight despite catastrophic structural damage. Cause of initial collision? Unclear. Possible turbulence, poor visibility, or evasive action from flak, but beneath the technical language lies something unspoken. Awe. Because no engineer can fully explain how 2 30-ton bombers, both fatally wounded, managed to balance midair in a grotesque harmony. The geometry of their damage, the angle of the wings, the counter-thrust of their engines, all combined by pure chance to create a fleeting stability. As if, for one impossible minute, physics had allowed grace. When the weather clears a week later, reconnaissance aircraft fly over the North Sea and Western Germany, searching for wreckage. They find scattered debris, twisted aluminum, a tire, a section of wing bearing a faded star and bar insignia, nothing that could tell the full story. The rest has vanished beneath the waves. Back at base, empty bunks remain untouched. Flight jackets still hang from pegs, photos of wives and sweethearts still taped to lockers. Green's bunk, in particular, draws quiet glances, the man who saluted before stepping into the sky. His crewmates fold his blanket tight, the way he always did. They hold a small service on the flight line. No chaplain, no speeches, just the men standing shoulder to shoulder under the drizzling rain. One of them reads softly from a scrap of paper. They fought the air, and the air took them back. God rest them all. Then they step away, engines rumbling again as new missions line up. The war doesn't pause for grief. Weeks later, when the 91st Bomb Group's after-action report reaches higher command, the collision is summarized in a single sentence. 2 aircraft lost due to mid-air collision over enemy territory. No survivors. That's all the official record will ever say. But among airmen, the ones who lived through it, the ones who saw it with their own eyes, the legend grows. Some claim the 2 fortresses kept flying for miles, locked together like brothers refusing to fall alone. Others say the crews exchanged signals through broken windows, waving in farewell before the end. No one knows how much of it is true anymore. What matters is the memory that, for one impossible, haunting minute above Europe, 2 dying bombers defied gravity, reason, and even death itself. Years later, when the war is over and the surviving men return home, the story resurfaces in pubs, reunions, and memoirs. A few journalists write about it, dismissing it as exaggeration. But those who were there insist otherwise. One navigator, decades later, said it best. I don't know if you'd call it luck or something holy, but for that 1 minute, those 2 ships flew together, like they refused to die alone. The incident fades into history. No medals, no headlines, just a quiet chapter buried among thousands of missions. But to the men of the 91st, it remains sacred. Proof that even in the cruelest machine of war, there was still room for something inexplicable, something almost human. In the years that followed, the war swallowed its own legends. Fact blurred into memory, memory into myth. Yet, among those who had served with the 91st Bomb Group, the story of the Piggyback fortresses was never forgotten. It passed from airman to airman, through decades of retellings, across VFW halls, reunion dinners, and living rooms where old men sat staring into glasses of whiskey, seeing that day again as if it was still burning in front of them. For many, it wasn't just another tragic accident in the endless list of losses that filled the war's ledgers. It was something else, something that defied the mechanical coldness of combat. 2 B-17s fused together in midair, flying against all logic, as if bound by the will of their crews. And for those who had watched it happen, it became a symbol of comradeship, of fate, of the idea that in war sometimes even death seemed unwilling to separate men who fought side by side. After the war, the US Army Air Forces compiled a post-war analysis of mid-air structural fusions, a cold technical term meant to describe what had happened that day. But there was little to explain. The incident had been witnessed by dozens of crews, yet no photographs, no physical evidence, no wreckage large enough to study ever surfaced. The engineers at Wright Field ran calculations, testing hypothetical collision angles, load tolerances, and airflow behavior. On paper, the outcome should have been immediate destruction. Both planes should have disintegrated on impact, but somehow they hadn't. The conclusion, if one could call it that, was quietly added to a classified appendix in 1946, while structurally improbable aerodynamic lift from both wings, coupled with engine thrust misalignment, may have resulted in transient stabilization. Transient stabilization. The phrase sounded clinical, but to the men who had watched it unfold, it meant something deeper. That for those few haunting moments, 2 dying aircraft and the souls within them had found a strange kind of balance before falling apart. By the 1950s, the 91st Bomb Group had become part of American law, its men returning to civilian life, some becoming mechanics, farmers, teachers, engineers. Yet at every reunion, when the talk turned to that day over Germany, conversation always slowed, voices dropping low. One gunner who'd seen the event from a tail turret described it in words that stayed with everyone who heard them. It was like seeing angels made of metal, holding each other up in the sky. Another man, a radio operator, who had survived countless missions, swore he saw figures moving between the planes, shadows inside the shattered fuselages, as if the two crews were working together to keep the impossible machine flying. Most called it imagination. Others called it grace. And in every retelling, the ending changed just slightly. Not from deception, but from the need to find meaning in something that defied reason. Some said one man from heaven sent made it out alive, his parachute opening seconds before the crash. Others believed none did, that they all stayed until the very end. It didn't matter which version was true. What mattered was the feeling it left behind. That maybe, in the chaos of that February sky, courage had become something tangible, something that could hold two planes together when everything else was breaking apart. Decades later, the official mission report still lay in an archive box, yellowed, barely legible. Aircraft number 42-38047, Heaven Sent, and number 44-8846, 10 horsepower gal, lost due to midair collision over Mönchengladbach. Crews presumed KIA no ceremony, no commendations. Just 20 names typed neatly across two columns. Captain Howard Johnson, Major Don Pashley, Sergeant Louis Green. Men who had no graves, only coordinates lost in the cold waters of the North Sea. In the years that followed, their families received standard telegrams, missing in action. Presumed deceased, some received folded flags. Others received nothing but silence. But among their letters, the ones returned unopened, many wrote the same final lines: "Tell the boys to come home safe." They never did. When the 91st Bomb Group Veterans Association erected their memorial in Cambridgeshire decades later, the planners debated which names to include. There were too many crews lost to list them all. But one old pilot, now stooped, his voice cracked with age, insisted on carving an inscription beneath the squadron crest. For those who flew together and fell together between heaven and iron, he said it was for Heaven Sent and 10 horsepower gal. No one argued. Today, historians call it one of the most mysterious midair incidents of the Second World War. An event so improbable that even modern aeronautical modeling struggles to replicate it. But for the men who witnessed it, no simulation could ever capture the sight of those two fortresses locked in their final fatal waltz above Germany. A sight that spoke not of machines or metal, but of something human, defiance, unity, and a refusal to fall alone. And in that, perhaps, lies the quiet truth of the piggyback fortresses. They were not just two bombers that collided. They were two crews who, in their final moments, achieved something that no one on Earth or in heaven had ever seen before. For 1 minute in the winter sky, they flew as one.